Hello and welcome to Degadoodle's Guide to Building Commander Decks for Reptiles. This is a quick little video I decided to throw together for a couple friends, but I'll probably just make it public anyway because, I like talking about Commander. Here we go. Basics. What is Commander? Commander is a 100-card format that's 99 cards and one commander, typically played at 40 life, and is singleton, which means no duplicate cards except for lands. There's typically 4 players. This is not required, however. In Commander, we have a couple hard versus soft rules. Hard rules are things that people don't really budge on. They're kind of fundamental to how the game is played. Soft rules, they're more things that you could change according to your play group or whatever your friends think. So hard rules are things like 99 cards, one commander. It's a 100-card format that's typically seen as like a deck building restriction. You got to follow it. Same with color identity. We'll go into that a little later. And soft rules, things like general legality. A majority of the cards in Magic are legal in Commander. If you want to know what cards aren't legal, you can look it up. It's pretty simple. Your life total, subject to change. If you want to play at 20 life, sure, whatever. It's up to your group. Anything your group deems rule 0, send it. It's your game. What is a commander? Is that a commander? Stormcrow? No, it is not a commander. Is this a commander? Derevi, Imperial Tactician? Yes, this is a commander. How did we know that? It's really simple. What commanders can you play? Legendary creatures that aren't banned, and sometimes planeswalkers and other things. If the card says you can play it as your commander, you can play it as your commander. Things like boom, bang, bada boom, right there. Legendary creatures, all of these, legal commanders. You can play any of them if you want. There are so many legendary creatures in Magic. You should look at them. But how do I know which one I want to play? I'm building my Magic deck. How do I know which one that I would like to play? You have to follow your heart. And importantly, that other thing I mentioned earlier, color identity. Let's say I like this guy. He's been in my rare binder. He's awesome. Rhea say, I want to build my commander deck around this guy. He costs 5 and 1 red. He's a red card, ostensibly a red card. He's a legendary creature. He is red. That means you can only play red cards and colorless cards because colorless cards are not red. So that's technically red. He restricts your colors to red. He is a red commander deck. This guy, he's a different dragon. He's also in the rare binder. He has a lot more colors. Look at all those colors. What does this mean? Well, it means a couple things. This guy, the Dragon, if you want him to be your commander, you have all 5 colors legal in the main deck. You could play any colors you want. That sounds like an awesome thing, but it does come with a downside. Good luck with your mana base. You're going to be putting your lands together and you realize you need to get all 5 colors of mana. That's not going to be cheap. And sometimes it's not going to be consistent either. Just comes with the fact that you are playing all 5 colors at the same time. And if you read his abilities, his Eminence ability, flying, and the other ability, he only really works with dragons. He's kind of limited in scope. He does the one thing really well, but he's really good at it. That strong effect, it works inside the command zone. Wait, what the hell is a command zone? The command zone. All right. Magical place outside the game. It's where your commander goes at the start. It's effectively always in your hand unless they're in play. It's not your hand, but it is your hand. Whenever your commander is destroyed, shuffled, exiled, ripped in half, someone touches it with Cheeto fingers, you can just be like, hey, wherever that my commander is going, it's going back to the command zone. That's the HQ, baby. Now it's going to cost 2 more to cast, 2 more colorless to cast every time you have to bring it back from the command zone. It's called the commander tax. It gets more expensive the more times you have to play it. But it can pretty much be wherever you want in relation to your library as long as it's visible. So the command zone, it's a neat little place. It's where your commander goes. Don't forget that. All right. Now we're going to build a deck. We're going to pick our commander. Picking your commander is a choice simple as, your favorite card or just a card that interests you, card that looks cool, card with an interesting or unique effect. It's pretty much the first choice you got to make when deck building. Not always, but when you're building a commander deck, usually the central focus is, the big guy himself. And it can always be changed later. If you build a deck that you really like and you're like, I don't really think the commander is that great, or I don't enjoy playing with this commander, you can keep the deck and switch out for a different legendary creature that has the same color identity. It's really up to you. That's half the fun of building a deck. All right, you built your deck. Great. First game, let's draw our hand. Okay, we're going to have a problem. Lands. We forgot to put them in the deck. Lands are really important. What the heck is a land? A land is a basic little thing that you put in the battlefield. You tap it and it makes a mana. Basic lands, that's literally all they do. Basic lands also don't follow the one copy per deck rule because it'd be kind of hard to build some decks if you could only have one of each kind of basic land. So just throw in as many basic lands as you want. That's up to you. How many should you have? We'll get into that. And what kind? We'll also get into that with probably good ideas for lands. Roughly 1/3 of the deck should be lands, but it varies depending on your average converted mana cost. That's a fancy way of saying if you have more expensive cards, probably bring more lands, like 38 or 39, because it's going to be a lot harder to play those expensive mana cost cards if you don't have the lands to play them. So generally a good idea to bring proportional lands to the mana curve. That's a fancy way of saying the average converted mana cost of your deck. Yeah, it's simple stuff. If you have really cheap cards, like 1, 2, 3 cost cards, and they're all over the place, you don't need that many lands because you'll probably be able to play them with just the 1 or 2 in your opening hand. But as a rule of thumb, just like 33, 34, that's fine. That'll get you 2, 3 lands in your opening hand, and you'll draw more. No big deal. If a color appears more often in your commander's color identity, you're probably gonna want that color more. So like if you have a red-black deck, but a majority of the cards in the deck are black, you're gonna want more black sources of mana than red or whatever I said. Yeah, you get it. It's simple stuff. Lands can also provide utility. There are lands that do all kinds of things, like lands that eliminate the hand size rule, lands that exile graveyards, lands that become dudes to beat your opponents up with. Lands can do a lot of things. Look into it. Just make sure you have enough because you gotta have lands to play spells. All right, now what? Spells. I just mentioned this. If it's not a land, it's a spell. Spells include instants and sorceries, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, planeswalkers, and while not required, it's generally a good idea to include at least a handful of all of these, with the exception of planeswalkers. You want a good variety of cards that do things, otherwise known as spells. You can cover a wide range of effects and functions with these spells. But which spells should I play? I made an orange triangle. It looks kind of like a Dorito. I'm using this to represent what I call the 3 F's of Commander deck building. Function, flavor, and funny. These are the 3 F's. We'll go into them one at a time. Function. Cards that have a function, usually, contribute to the overall purpose of the deck or synergize with the effects of the commander. These are your bread and butter. They're your backbone. They do the thing the deck is supposed to do. They help you win, usually. These are win more cards. You got to win. So you got to play cards that do what the deck wants to do. Function cards. They also play a necessary role in making your life not suck. So think things like drawing cards, getting mana, interacting with other players' pieces of the board. Those sorts of things you're gonna want to do probably all of those. All of the colors have methods of doing all of these things. Shouldn't be a problem. Now moving on to flavor. Cards that have flavor usually aesthetically fit the theme of the deck. They look sick as hell, and they can be a fun deck building restriction. So this is up for contention with a lot of people that play Commander. They don't think flavor is important when building their deck, and to that I say that's dumb, that's stupid. Flavor is super important. You got to have cards that kind of bring it all together flavorfully. You can also have cards that are like stupid, dumb expensive. I have a bird tribal commander deck. It's a deck with all birds in it. And you know what? Some of those birds are foil. Some of those birds are really expensive. And the fact that I restricted myself to only playing bird creatures in the deck made it a fun deck building restriction to build a deck. Flavor is important. And finally, we'll move on to funny. All right. Cards that are funny usually make players say, why the hell are you playing that? They're pet cards, cards with bizarre effects. I really like this card. I don't care if it doesn't fit in the deck. I want to play it. Go you. You got this. Great work. And they help diversify your deck and make it yours. Like I was saying with that bird deck, it's known for a lot of things. It's an aggressive strategy. You play birds, you turn birds sideways, you punch people in the face. But I do have a little bit of a pet card in there called Dovescape. And the deck is probably more known for that silly little card than it is just being a aggressive bird tribal deck. So cards that are funny can really define your deck. And I know I'm going into this a lot, but it's hard to explain. When you're playing Commander, and especially from my perspective, if I see a card that I've never seen before and it's got a bunch of text on it, I get excited. I get a little dopamine rush. It activates the serotonin receptors. I'm like, holy, it's a new card. I want to read that card. I want to know what it does. If that card is absolutely wild, big ups to you. You built an amazing deck because I'm just going to remember that card forever now. I'm going to add it to the encyclopedia, and that deck is now known for that silly little card you played, even if that card isn't good. Because remember, it's not always about winning, it's about having fun with your friends, sitting down, playing wizard cards. Anyways, examples. All right, let's say I picked out a commander. Hapatra, Vizier of Poison. She's green and black, and she's a legendary creature, human cleric. It's a 2/2, and it's got some effects. When she deals combat damage to a player, you can put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Cool. Whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, you create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. So, this is the commander I want to play. Awesome. Great. What are some cards that are functional? Well, obviously cards that put -1/-1 counters on creatures to activate her second triggered ability to make snakes. Those would be safe bets. Cards that trigger when opponents' creatures die because you're going to be putting -1/-1 counters on a bunch of stuff. Things are going to be dying. That's good. We want that to happen. And maybe even evasion for Hapatra, somehow getting her through safely so she can activate her first ability. Wouldn't be a bad idea. I've listed a couple example of cards like Obelisk Spider has obvious synergies. It's literally from the same set, has all pretty much the same text. When you deal combat damage to a creature, you put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. Whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, each opponent loses one and you gain one. Great, awesome. That's what the deck does. Blowfly Infestation is an enchantment. Like I said, good to diversify your spells. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, so a creature dying, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So counters going out more means more good things for Hapatra because you make more snakes. You will have a lot of snakes with this deck. Poison Tip Archer, like I said, when opponent creatures die, each opponent or whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Things dying is going to happen when -1/-1 counters are being flung about like this. So those are some decent examples of function cards in the Hapatra deck. Moving on to flavor cards. Flavor cards like events from Commander, your Commander's lore or home plane are a safe bet. You could also go an alternative route and be like, I just think snakes are cool and have a bunch of snakes in your deck. That's also awesome. The flavor is up to your interpretation. So, I've also included some examples of flavor cards, like Hapatra's Mark. It has her name in it, it's from her home plane, and it does the thing that your deck does, but like in reverse a little bit. It could be used as protection and removing -1/-1 counters from your creatures. Great. Awesome card. One green, instant. We love it. Other thing, I just think snakes are cool. Big snake, big freaking reptile. 2/6, that's weird. Attacking creatures you control have death touch. Sure, they probably already do because you have a board full of snakes, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Great. Awesome. It's a snake. And, Festering Mummy. It dies, it makes a -1/-1 counter. It's a functional card, and it's from Hapatra's home plane. So it's technically a flavor card. It does your thing. Who knows? Maybe you can justify that. It's up to your interpretation. All right, next. Funny cards. Cards that you go, I really like this card. Unexpected effects or just straight up random bullshit. It's great. I love funny cards. Triumph of the Hordes. You have a board that is composed of Hapatra, 942 snakes, and like three insects from another card. Don't worry about it. Triumph of the Hordes. Now all those snakes are +1/+1 bigger. They have trample and infect. That's funny. That's going to win the game, and it's going to be funny because you infected everyone with a bunch of snakes that you made from doing the thing your commander does. That's funny. This little guy, this is what I was talking about when I said cards that people don't know about and will have to pick up and read and be like, wow, that's an interesting card. I didn't know that existed. Omid Eternal. He's a little dude that whenever an opponent casts a spell, you put a 1/1 counter on him. I don't want to put -1/-1 counters on my creatures. That's big sad. But it's okay because whenever you deal combat damage to a player, you remove all the -1/-1 counters from this guy. Um, but what if they just block it, you ask? Well, he has a flipped 3, so even if they block it, they take 3 damage. It's a great card. It's like an all-in-one package for this deck, basically. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, make a snake. Trigger your -1/-1 counters. If it dies, it dies. Things die in this deck. It is what it is. Omid Eternal. Cool card. Funny card. And Sachi, daughter of Seshiro. Uh, other snakes you control get +0/+1. It's all right. We've gone over the 3 Fs of commander deck building, but how do I find all these cards? Where are these cards? Where are Magic cards commonly sold in every store you've ever been to? But anyways, you can find cards online at these, EDHREC, Scryfall. There's a million databases that have every Magic card you could ever think of, and pretty much a majority of the Magic cards ever printed are legal in Commander. So yeah, you can go there. You can also be social, ask fellow Magic players. Believe it or not, people that play Magic like to talk about Magic, me included. So if you just ask them, "Hey, I'm building this deck. I have this commander. Do you know any cards that might be good in this deck?" They'll be like, "Hey, I can think of like 10 off the top of my head because I'm a walking encyclopedia for Magic cards." All right, great. We've done the thing. You have a deck that has lands, great, and a bunch of spells that are functional, flavorful, or funny, or some combination of all three. Excellent. We have all that. Now what?